Ned Stark had always appeared as the bastion of honor, the man who would never kill a queen. But if his secrets ran deeper, if beneath that stoic face lay a destiny to strangle Cersei Lannister's life from her throat, the game changes entirely. I begin in the silent corridors of King's Landing, where whispers move faster than daggers. A single candle flickers over a stone wall, drawing long shadows that dance like silent witnesses. And somewhere beyond those walls, Cersei dreams of power, of vengeance, of the prophecy she cannot escape. He came under cover of dusk, riding no banner, bearing no herald. The north's winter wind trailed ice across the Red Keep's parapets, muffling his steps. Ned's heart pounded, but not with fear, with resolve. He had watched Cersei's cruelty for years, had monitored her growing tyranny, the way she strangled dissent and killed those who threatened her grip. But he never thought he would be the instrument of her end. Yet prophecy, injustice, and fate had twisted him into a reluctant executioner. Passing through hidden passages known only to a few, Ned felt the weight of his ancestors pressing on him. Every footfall echoed in chambers where lords and ladies had danced, plotted, betrayed. He paused before a heavy door that led to Cersei's private chambers. Beyond lay gold tapestries and the scent of perfumed silk. Behind that door slept the queen whose greed and paranoia had brought ruin to kingdoms. He placed a gauntleted hand on the latch, breathing in, recalling the faces of innocents she'd crushed, the small folk, the dissenters, the innocent children caught in her games. Inside, Cersei slept fitfully, tossing in sheets of wine-stained linen. Her dreams were nightmares. Whispers of Maggie's prophecy haunted her. When your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you. The words echoed in her mind, a deathly promise she tried to outrun but always ran toward. She believed the Valonqar was Tyrion, or perhaps Jaime, never imagining the most honorable man she knew might bear that role. A wiki of Ice and Fire +2 science fiction and fantasy stack exchange, the weekend, slipped inside on silent boots. He saw her pale skin illuminated by moonlight, the curves of her face softened in slumber, the crown of golden hair spread across pillows. His sword, cold and heavy, waited in his hand. For a heartbeat he hesitated, memories flooding. Catelyn's face, Robb's laughter, summer's warmth in Winterfell. Could he kill a queen, even one so vile? But justice, he told himself, needed an execution. She had to fall for the realm to breathe again. He stepped forward. The blade rose. Cersei jerked awake, something caught in her throat, panic flooding her eyes. "Who?" she gasped. But Ned was already moving. His gloved fingers closed around her throat as much as the sword did. "Valonqar," he whispered in his mind. She clawed, struggled, but the strength was his now. His grip tightened. Her crown slipped, clinking against the floor. She choked words. "No, you... Tears..." Blood glistened at his fingers. Ned's heart hammered. He tightened again. The room, the world, shrank to her face, her eyes the prophecy. Then silence. Her body slumped. The last breath escaped. Ned let go, stepping back, blade dripping. He stared at her corpse, at the promise fulfilled but the cost unimaginable. The Valonqar had struck, invisible, unknown, unseen. He had killed the queen, undone centuries of intrigue with one act of vengeance and mercy merged. Hours later the castle stirred. Cersei would be found. Guards would shout. Alarm bells would ring. But Ned had prepared. He had left no sign, no clue. He slipped away into shadow, changed as dusk became dawn. Word would spread. Cersei is dead. The Lannisters would howl. Jaime would wrap the throne. Tyrion would curse. But none would guess the quiet wolf from the north who had come to deliver prophecy. Winterfell's chill greeted him on his return. Catelyn sensed unease. Sansa saw a new hardness in his eyes. Bran asked. Arya watched her father with sharp suspicion. Jon sensed distance. They pressed, but he lied. He had journeyed to King's Landing for matters of state, to protect the realm, to secure alliances. He could not admit that he had plotted a regicide masked in prophecy. The realm trembled. Without Cersei, the Lannister hold fractured. Jaime and Tyrion bickered. The storm of succession unleashed. The small folk whispered unrest. The nobles bent knees or sharpened swords. Ned found himself in the center of a maelstrom he had set in motion, yet the whispers persisted. The prophecy had been fulfilled. Maggie's words haunted every noble court. Some believed Tyrion had murdered her in vengeance. Others thought Jaime had broken the bond of incest and done the deed. None suspected a Stark. None realized the Valonqar could be a man of honor wielding death like a reckoning. Inside, Ned's soul warred. He had committed the greatest sin, taking a life in secret. He held no joy in it. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Cersei's pale face, the prophecy's words echoing in his ears. And he steeled himself. This was for the realm's healing, for the north, for the innocent crushed by her reign. The corridors of King's Landing still held shadows. The Red Keep would not rest in peace, but in the north a wolf stood changed. The Valonqar had spoken through him, and now the Game of Thrones would never be the same again. Thrones would never be the same again. Smoke drifted from the chimneys of Winterfell, curling into the grey northern sky like the ghosts of past decisions. Ned Stark stood on the battlements, snowflakes melting on his fur-lined cloak, eyes scanning the horizon that stretched far beyond the icy pines. The weight of what he had done, not just to Cersei but to the order of the realm itself, coiled tightly in his chest. He had slain a queen. Not in war, not in public justice, but in secret. Assassination, treason, the very things he had despised. And yet, he told himself again, as he had every morning since, it was necessary. But necessary did not mean just. Down in the great hall, ravens fluttered. News had reached Winterfell quickly, as he had predicted. Cersei Lannister, Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, Lioness of the Rock, had been found dead in her chambers, strangled. No signs of struggle, no guards alerted. It was clean, too clean, suspiciously clean. Her death shattered the already fragile balance of power like a stone to stained glass. The small council had imploded. Varys vanished. Grand Maester Pycelle fumbled for words in court. Sir Gregor rampaged. Jaime, enraged and broken, had withdrawn into silence. And Tyrion. Oh, Tyrion. The imp's rage had echoed across the capital. He had been the first to speak aloud the word others dared not. Prophecy. The Valonqar did it, he said. She feared him her whole life, and he came for her. Many assumed he meant himself. Tyrion hadn't denied it. Better to own a murder you didn't commit than let the realm descend into chaos without a narrative. But Tyrion also swore vengeance. Not for her death, but for the chaos that followed. Cersei had been many things, but she was a bulwark. With her gone, the floodgates had opened. King's Landing burned with tension. Nobles accused each other. The faith militants stirred once more. The Tyrells, sensing weakness, pushed south with quiet resolve. The Martells sent envoys cloaked in silence. The Riverlands stirred with an unease that only Ned could read. They were sensing a new war, not of kings but of ghosts. Robb entered the room with the stiff gait of a boy, not yet used to his man's armor. "Father," he said, "a raven from the Eyrie. Lady Arryn wants to know if the rumors are true, that you've returned to court in secret." Ned turned slowly, his voice as cold as the wind. "I never returned to court, but they say you did," Robb replied, eyes searching. "They say you were seen near Harrenhal, that a hooded man matching your description passed through King's Landing the night before Cersei died." "Rumors are winds, Robb," Ned said, "and winds lie." But even as he said it, a sliver of doubt passed between father and son. Robb had always trusted him. Now that trust wavered, not because of words spoken, but because of the ones unspoken. The North trusted Ned Stark, but it did not yet know the man he had become. In the South, Tyrion was playing a dangerous game. He stood before a fractured council, wine in hand, mocking the silence. So he said, "Who do we blame today? Me, Jaime? A ghost of prophecy? Perhaps the gods reached down and squeezed the lioness's throat themselves." Jaime stood behind the Iron Throne, hands clenched. "Enough!" "No, brother," Tyrion said, turning. "Not enough. Not nearly. Our sister is dead. Our enemies are licking their lips. And you want order? There is no order. There is only truth. And the truth is, someone murdered her. Someone got to her through all our gold, our guards, our power." Jaime's jaw tightened. "You think it was father's enemies?" "I think it was someone far more dangerous than our father's enemies," Tyrion whispered. "I think it was someone she never saw coming." Varys reappeared that night, silent as fog. His presence caused more unease than comfort. "The balance is broken," he said. "And when balance breaks, fire follows. There are whispers from the east. Dany Targaryen builds her fleet. She smells Lannister blood in the water." Tyrion laughed bitterly. "Let her come. At least dragons are honest in their destruction." But in the north, Ned's conscience darkened. Dreams haunted him, not of Cersei but of Lyanna. Of the Tower of Joy, of Jon, the lies he'd told, the truths he'd buried. His betrayal was never one act. It was a series of choices, each one cloaked in nobility but stained with consequence. He was no longer just the Warden of the North. He had become a player, the kind he once swore never to be. Maester Luwin brought more messages. The Vale stirred. The Baratheons sniffed opportunity. Even the Iron Islands, long silent, began to murmur. The death of a queen had created a vacuum, and the realm knew only one way to fill it, with blood. Sansa listened at doorways now. She was growing sharper, more aware. Arya asked questions. "Why did you leave in the middle of the night, father?" she had said. "Why didn't you take guards?" He told her stories, gentle lies. She didn't believe them. Bran, since his fall, said little, but he watched everything. And Jon's silence hurt the most. The boy had always looked up to him. Now his glances were short, hesitant. They could feel the shift in their father. The man who had always stood straight now carried something invisible on his shoulders. The North wanted to stay out of the wars to come. But war doesn't knock politely. It crashes through doors. A raven arrived from Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon, ever self-righteous, declared Cersei's death proof of illegitimacy in King's Landing. He would march. He demanded the North's support. "Justice demands it," the letter said. Ned read the letter 3 times, then burned it. But the ghosts didn't vanish. In the crypts, he stared at Lyanna's tomb. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "But I've broken others," a voice answered from the shadows. "You've done more than that." Ned turned. It was Littlefinger. "How did you get in here?" Ned asked. "I never left," Peter said with a smile. "Not really. You can't kill a shadow, Ned. And you, of all people, should know the secrets don't stay buried forever, especially ones that strangle queens." Ned's hand went to his sword. "Oh, I'm not here to fight," Peter said, stepping forward. "I'm here to offer a deal. You've already crossed the threshold, Stark. You killed Cersei. I know it. You know it. And soon others will know it too. You have no proof." "I don't need proof," Peter said, eyes glinting. "I only need doubt." "Enough of it. And you're no longer the Honorable Lord Stark. You're the silent dagger. The hidden poison." Ned's silence was answer enough, "So here's my offer," Peter continued. "You back my claim to Harrenhal, and in return I make your little murder disappear." Ned walked past him, stone-faced. "You think you're better than me," Peter called after him. "But you're not. You're just slower to admit what the game demands." Outside, snow fell harder. War drums would soon echo from every corner of Westeros. Because when a lioness is strangled, the pride doesn't mourn, it bites back. And Ned Stark, the quiet wolf, had drawn first blood. He had become prophecy. He had become the Valonqar. And now, everyone would bleed for it. Everyone would bleed for it. The day Cersei Lannister died, the sun in King's Landing had hidden behind dark clouds, refusing to witness what had been done. But in the days that followed, it was the realm itself that darkened. From the Reach to the Vale, from the Riverlands to the Iron Islands, the whispers began to solidify into panic. The Queen is dead. The throne is exposed, and no one knows who killed her. But that mystery didn't remain one for long. Rumors are like wildfire in Westeros, easily sparked, impossible to contain. A traveling merchant claimed he saw Lord Eddard Stark pass through the Stormlands under a false banner. A drunk blacksmith's apprentice in Flea Bottom remembered a man with the look of a northerner slipping past the guards near Maegor's holdfast. A chambermaid found a single white wolf hair on the Queen's bedsheets. Alone they meant nothing. Together they built a picture. And soon that picture had a name: Ned Stark. Tyrion was the first to voice it aloud, but not because he wanted revenge. No, the imp was smarter than that. He wanted leverage. A dead queen gave him power over the chaos. And if the quiet noble Lord Stark had turned assassin, then the rules of the game had changed. He met with Varys in the remains of the Tower of the Hand. The eunuch was dressed simply, as always, but his eyes carried the weight of too many secrets. "Do you believe it?" Tyrion asked him, sipping from a goblet that had not left his hand since Cersei's body had gone cold. Varys didn't answer at first. "Then it explains much. It destroys more," Tyrion said. "The man who lectured me on honor turns out to be the ghost in the Queen's bedchamber." "What do you make of that?" "I make of it what I must," Varys replied. "The realm is made of people, not queens, and people require stability." "Spoken like a man planning a betrayal," Tyrion muttered. "So what, we march on Winterfell?" "No, Varys said. "We don't march. We maneuver, and maneuver they did." In the north, Ned met the first real consequence of his silent war. A raven came from Riverrun, from Catelyn's brother Edmure. The Lannisters had begun pressing along the borders of the Riverlands. Trade roads were seized, watchtowers burned, gold cloaks turned mercenary. Tywin Lannister had moved, and he was not alone. Jaime Lannister had returned to Casterly Rock, fury hidden beneath his polished armor. The Kingslayer was no longer content to serve crowns that crumbled beneath his feet. He wanted vengeance. He wanted control. And most of all, he wanted to know who had taken Cersei from him. She was mad, Tyrion had told him. "You know she was mad, Jaime." "She was mine," Jaime answered coldly. Jon Snow watched his father from across the training yard at Castle Black. His time at the Wall had been brief, a temporary assignment to assess the Night's Watch after a spate of desertions. But his thoughts weren't on wildlings or whites. They were on his father's eyes, distant, heavy, always turning to the horizon as if expecting shadows. "He's not the same," Jon said to Sam one night. "Something's changed in him." "Maybe he's just tired," Sam offered. "No," Jon muttered. "He's hiding something. Something big." And he wasn't wrong. In secret chambers, Ned sat with Maester Luwin, poring over letters from lords who no longer addressed him as Warden of the North, but as a player in a game of shadows. Some begged for alliance, others threatened. But one letter stood apart, its seal broken, its ink faded, yet its message clear. "The lion roars for your blood." It was from Tyrion. Just 3 words, scribbled with the elegance of a drunkard and the calculation of a kingmaker. It meant war, or at least the beginning of it, and Ned knew it. He summoned the Bannermen, Karstarks, Umbers, Manderleys. The North would not fight unless provoked, but now the provocation was loud and clear. The Lannisters would come, not for justice but for reputation, for control. And if they came north, they would find swords waiting. But even as he planned, Ned wondered, had he made the right choice? Cersei's death had removed a tyrant, yes, but she had also been a keystone. Remove her and the arch collapses. Catelyn confronted him that night. "For they're saying it was you," she whispered. "In the halls. In the letters. They say you killed her." Ned didn't answer. "You didn't deny it," she said softly. "I did what had to be done," he finally said. Catelyn's voice trembled. "And what will you do when our sons are killed for your justice?" His silence was colder than the winds outside. Meanwhile, far across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen's ships grew in number. Her dragons soared higher, and the whispers reached her ears as well. "The lioness is dead," Ser Jorah told her. "Strangled in her sleep. The Iron Throne weakens," Dany's eyes blazed. "Then I take it." But Varys ever ahead had already sent word to her. A single parchment folded once, sealed with wax, bearing just one sentence. "The North remembers." And the North strikes, she read it twice. "Eddard Stark," she whispered. "Impossible," Jorah said. "Unlikely," she corrected. "But impossible? No, if he did this, then he's no longer just a man. He's a message." Back in King's Landing, Tyrion watched fires burn in the night sky. "This realm is eating itself," he said to Bronn. Bronn spat. "Better make sure you eat before you're eaten." Tyrion smiled grimly. "I always do." And in Winterfell, Arya stood in the Godswood watching the leaves rustle. "You killed her," she said without turning. Her voice wasn't accusing. It was curious. Ned stepped beside her. "She deserved it," Arya said. Ned didn't reply. "She was poison. Like Joffrey. Like the whole damn South." "She was still queen," Ned finally said. "She was a monster," Arya snapped. "And if you killed her, then I understand." "I really do." Ned looked at his daughter, so young and already shaped by blood. He wondered how much innocence remained in any of them. Down in the crypts, Jon Snow lit a torch. He walked past the statues of dead kings and lords, toward Lyanna. The truth still sat on Ned's lips like lead. The lies he'd told to protect Jon, the secrets, the murders. A choice had been made in a queen's bedchamber, and now the world burned for it. This wasn't the Game of Thrones anymore. This was the price of prophecy. This was the storm born not of dragons, but of wolves. And the wolf had just begun to howl. The Iron Islands were the first to move, while the rest of Westeros whispered and bled. The krakens of the sea heard the silence after Cersei's death as a calling. Balon Greyjoy raised his banner once more. and the drowned priests roared their chants beneath crashing waves. "What is dead may never die," they screamed, "but rises again harder and stronger." And now so would they. The Queen of the South was gone, and the coastlines were unguarded. Fleets burned, harbours fell, Storm's End braced for siege. The realm was distracted, too busy choking on the loss of its lioness to realize that Salt and Iron had already begun to reclaim the West. But in Winterfell, the fires burned hotter than ever. Ravens came by the dozen. Each one carried bad news wrapped in noble words. The Riverlands were split. The Vale no longer responded. House Tyrell had gone silent, and no one knew what side they were waiting for. But the Lannisters? The Lannisters were marching. Tywin had returned from Casterly Rock with enough gold to raise 3 armies. Jaime rode at the head of one, and Tyrion, clever, dangerous Tyrion, was left behind to poison the air with politics and false alliances. And Ned Stark knew it. He had lit the match. He had snapped the keystone, and now the kingdom cracked. He stood in the Godswood again, alone this time, his hand resting on the cold, smooth bark of the heart tree. "I thought I could stop the rot," he murmured. "But I may have only changed its shape." Behind him a figure stepped out of the shadows. "You stopped one poison," said the voice, calm and amused. "But you released another." Ned turned. It was Melisandre. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice low. "I follow fire," she said. "And now fire follows you. I don't want your gods, or your games." "But you've already played the game," she replied, stepping closer. "You've taken a life, a queen. Do you not see it? You are no longer a lord. You are a symbol. I am a father," he snapped. "I am a man who did what he thought was right." "And so was Stannis," she said. "And Renly. And every king who's ever bled for the throne." "I don't want the throne. No," she said, eyes like embers. "But the throne wants you." He turned away, but her words stayed. The North had begun to shift around him. Lords who once spoke his name with reverence now did so with fear. Respect had morphed into awe. And awe in the hands of men quickly became something dangerous. Robb watched his father from the walls, confused and proud and afraid. "Is this what leadership means?" he asked Theon. "Doing the unthinkable?" Theon, who had spent his life pretending not to care, only shrugged. "It means doing what no one else will. That's how you win." "I'm not sure I want to win that way," Robb murmured. "Arya sharpened her blade every night now." "He killed her," she whispered once to Jon. "I know it." "You know it." Jon didn't deny it. He couldn't. There was something about Ned now, something colder than the North and harder than steel. The man who had once refused to lie, who had condemned deceit, had become a ghost who moved in the shadows. And the worst part, no one could truly say it wasn't necessary. Meanwhile, Jaime Lannister crossed the twins with fire in his heart. Every inn that displayed a direwolf banner was torched. Every northern messenger was silenced. His golden hand glinted in the sunlight as he vowed again and again, "He dies by my blade." Tywin didn't stop him. The Lord of Casterly Rock had always known that vengeance was a useful tool. "Let the boy burn," he told his council, "and when the North bleeds, we take it." But Tyrion, sitting alone in the Red Keep solar, saw the flaw in it all. "He's not bleeding," he muttered. "He's baiting us," Varys nodded. "Perhaps the wolf has learned to hunt." In the shadows of King's Landing, whispers called Ned Stark the ghost of prophecy, the silent Valonqar. Some said he'd ridden with the stranger himself, delivering death like an offering. Others believed he'd simply lost his soul after the death of Robert Baratheon, and Cersei was only the beginning. But no one knew for sure. And that made it worse. The North grew bold. Smaller houses that once stayed hidden began rising. Skygosi ships raided Lannisport. Bear Island declared its full loyalty to House Stark, warning the South, "Come for our king and you'll meet our claws." For they were calling him that now, not warden, not lord, but king. Quietly at first, then louder. The Boltons stayed silent, too silent. One night, as snow drifted in spirals over the ramparts, a raven arrived bearing no sigil, just a black ribbon tied around its leg. Maester Luwin unrolled the scroll and read it aloud. She screamed your name as she died. Ned turned pale. His hands clenched. No name signed it. No location given. Just the words. A reminder. For a threat, he didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he summoned Jon Snow. "I need you to ride south," he said. "South?" Jon asked. "To what end?" "To watch, to listen. To understand what moves beneath the surface, you want me to spy. I want you to be ready. For what? Ned didn't answer, but he gave Jon a sealed letter, one the boy was never to open unless the North fell. That was the first time Jon realized something terrible was coming. At the wall, ravens went unanswered. The Night's Watch was collapsing, its strength withering as more men fled than joined. The wildlings stirred. There were whispers of things moving in the forest, not men, not beasts. Something else, something cold, but no one listened, because the realm burned, and when the fire is in your house you don't look toward the ice. Daenerys sailed. Dragons shrieked above her. "The lion is dead," she said to her council. "The wolf draws blood. It is time to finish the hunt." But even across the sea, she heard the name whispered on the wind. Ned Stark, the man who killed Cersei, the man who broke the game. And now, in every corner of Westeros, kings began to rise. Claimants emerged from shadow. Old loyalties cracked. Every lord, every house, every soldier now asked the same question. If Ned Stark could strike down a queen in silence, who could strike next? Who would wear the crown? And who would survive to see it? Because this was no longer about thrones, this was about reckoning, and reckoning had a name. Had a name. The winds howled over Moat Cailin, sweeping across the marshes like the breath of angry gods. Ned Stark stood on its ancient walls, watching the southern road stretch like a blade pointed at the heart of the north. He knew they were coming. The Lannisters, the Tyrells, the remnants of the Baratheon bannermen. They all marched under different banners, but they marched toward the same enemy, him. He had become the storm they wanted to destroy, not because they knew for certain he had killed Cersei, but because they feared he had. And fear is a weapon as sharp as Valyrian steel. Rumors did what swords could not. They turned peace into preparation, allies into spies, and now the kingdoms bled not because of what was known, but because of what was believed. Robb approached from behind, armor fresh polished, sword strapped too tight across his back. "Father," he said, his voice steadier than before, "the scouts say Tywin has crossed the Trident. Jaime rides west, and the Golden Company has been spotted in Old Town. Paid with Lannister gold." Ned didn't blink. "Then they'll be here within a fortnight. Should we call the banners again?" "They're already riding." "The North is awake, Robb. You don't need to call it. You only need to lead it," Robb swallowed. "And if we fall?" "Then we fall as wolves, not as dogs." But in his chest, Ned felt the weight of every step he'd taken. One death. That's all it had been. One decision. But it had shaken the realm harder than any war he'd ever fought. The lie had grown larger than the truth. And now it swallowed them all. Tyrion Lannister, meanwhile, found himself cornered. King's Landing was no longer his. Oh, he sat in the council chambers. He drank in the throne room. But the people didn't cheer. The lords didn't trust. And the crown on Tommen's head grew heavier by the day. Not because of its weight, but because of the hands waiting to snatch it. He met with Varys beneath the Red Keep. "I need to know," Tyrion said, voice low. "Did he really do it?" "Does it matter?" Varys replied, "I'm trying to stop a war. You're too late. You're trying to redirect a firestorm." Tyrion paced. "The North was never meant to rise. Ned Stark was never meant to strike first." Varys nodded. "Which makes me wonder, if even Ned Stark can become a killer, what hope is there for the rest of us?" "None," Tyrion muttered. "Only survival." Across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen finally reached Westeros. Her ships landed on Dragonstone. Her dragons roared above Storm's End, and her eyes turned westward, toward King's Landing and beyond it. The North. She had expected the South to be her first battlefield. But when she heard the name Stark whispered with both fear and reverence, she realized the battlefield had shifted. The realm was not looking for a dragon. It was rallying around a wolf. "We must march on Winterfell," Ser Jorah said. "No," she replied. "We must understand it." "Understand what?" "Why the realm fears a man who never wanted power, and why they follow him anyway." At Winterfell, Jon Snow returned from the south with more questions than answers. He had spoken with river lords, with broken men and hedge knights. All of them said the same thing. Ned Stark is not the same. He's colder, sharper, dangerous. Jon didn't want to believe it until he read the sealed letter, the one his father had given him before he left. He wasn't meant to open it, but the weight of war pushed him past honor. Inside were only a few lines. If you're reading this, then I've failed. The Queen is dead by my hand, not for vengeance, for peace, for the children. Jon stared at those words for hours. His father, the man who had raised him on stories of justice and restraint, had become a murderer, even if justified, even if inevitable. It still shattered something inside him. Arya watched Jon with knowing eyes. "Now you understand," she said softly. "I don't," he muttered. "I don't understand any of it. He did it for us, he did it for himself. Maybe both," Arya said. "Does it matter?" It did, because now Jon stood at a crossroad. Follow his father into shadows, or try to pull him back into the light. Jaime Lannister's army reached the neck with banners flying and siege engines rolling. The North met them with fire and blood. Small skirmishes exploded into full battles. Robb Stark led the vanguard, young and brilliant, and his direwolf Grey Wind ripped through enemy lines like a ghost. The South had never known war in the snow, and they suffered for it. But Jaime was not just a knight. He was a lion seeking vengeance. He left the battlefield one night under cover of darkness. He took 3 riders and vanished into the woods. When he returned, one of his men was missing, and his sword was bloodied. The next day, a village burned. Ned Stark received the report without flinching. "Jaime's sending messages," Robb said. "Then we send one back." They rode at dawn. The Battle of the Bones was not the largest, nor the most strategic, but it was the bloodiest. Stark bannermen clashed with Lannister knights beneath a sky choked with snow. Arrows fell like hail. Swords shattered on ice. And in the middle of it all, Ned Stark found Jaime. They met sword to sword. Steel rang across the frozen stream. No words were spoken. No insults traded. Just steel and breath and the sound of wolves in the distance. Jaime fought with fury. Ned fought with purpose. And when it ended, the Kingslayer lay bleeding in the snow. Ned did not finish him. "You want to die?" he asked. "I want you to suffer," Jaime spat. "Then live." Ned turned and walked away. Back at camp, the lords questioned him. "Why spare him?" they asked. "Because mercy," Ned said, "is how you kill monsters without becoming one." But in the shadows, Peter Baelish smiled. "Even now," he said to himself, "you still think there's a way out." The war had only begun. Dany was marching north. Tyrion was aligning with broken houses. The Freys began to stir, and the Night's Watch, what remained of it, sent a raven bearing words no one wanted to read. "The dead do not care for your thrones." But no one listened because all they could see was blood. And in the middle of it, the Valonqar walked silently, wrapped not in prophecy, but in consequence. Ned Stark had killed Cersei Lannister, and now all of Westeros was dying with her. Ash fell over Winterfell like black snow. The fire that had started near the broken ramparts had been extinguished by dawn, but its smoke lingered, thick and bitter. Ned Stark stood in the courtyard, sword still wet, eyes rimmed red not from tears but from what he had been forced to do. The war had reached his gates, not just from the south, but from all sides now. Daenerys Targaryen's dragons had circled the north like vultures for days, first in warning, then in wrath. But it wasn't fire that scorched the north. It was betrayal. A raven had arrived 2 nights before, bearing a single line in elegant script. "Jon has bent the knee, not to Ned, not to the north." But to Daenerys, Ned had stared at the message until the candle beside him guttered out. He knew Jon's heart. He knew his blood, even if Jon didn't, but the message still struck like a blade. The boy he raised, the son he protected through 1,000 lies, had chosen a queen from across the sea over the wolf who raised him. But Ned also knew why, because Jon had read the letter. The confession. The one Ned wrote for a future he feared might never come. The one Jon wasn't supposed to read until Ned was dead or disgraced. And now, everything had shifted. From the Guards' Wood, Arya watched the sky. The dragons had not returned since burning one of the grain stores near Last Hearth, but their shadows haunted the clouds. "She's coming," she whispered. "With or without him." "She's his queen now," Sansa said bitterly. "And Jon is hers," Arya's voice darkened. "That won't protect him." At Castle Black, Jon Snow stood before what remained of the Night's Watch, less than 100 black brothers, most too old, too young, or too broken to fight. But he wasn't there to lead them. He was there to speak truth. "She's coming for him," Dolorous Ed said. "Maybe she should," Jon replied. "He killed her." Ed stared at him. Would you have done differently? Jon didn't answer, because he didn't know, and in Dragonstone Daenerys prepared. The wolf dies, she told Grey Worm. He poisoned the realm. They call him noble, but he hides behind that word like armor. He murdered the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. There is no honor in that, Varys tried to object. If we destroy the North, we lose the people. But she had stopped listening to advisers. Only fire now, she sent word, kneel or burn. When the raven arrived at Winterfell, it was carried not by a blackbird, but by a white one, marked in ash. Robb read it aloud before the great hall. Lords shouted. Some wanted to surrender, others to fight. One by one they looked to Ned. He stood slowly. There will be no surrender, he said. Not because we are proud, but because we must answer for what we began. Sansa leaned forward. We can still send her the truth. You did it for peace. Truth doesn't matter anymore, Ned replied. Only power. That night he wrote a final letter to Jon. It never reached him, because the dragons arrived first. Winterfell prepared for siege. Fires were lit across the forests. Ravens scattered in every direction. Ballistae were raised, though they knew they were useless. And then the sky tore open. Drogon and Rhaegal descended in screams of fire and fury. Their flames licked the towers. The main gate shattered under molten stone. And behind them rode the Queen of Dragons, Daenerys, wearing black, crownless, heartless. She didn't speak when she arrived at the gates. She looked at Ned Stark. He stood on the outer wall, his cloak billowing in the freezing wind. Their eyes locked across the field of ash and snow. You killed her, she said. I did, he replied. She dismounted, walked alone toward the gates. Her army didn't follow. Neither did her dragons. She wanted this moment for herself. Up close, she looked smaller than the image Ned had carried in his mind. But her eyes burned brighter. You're everything I was warned about, she said. Cold, quiet, deadly. And you, Ned said, are everything I was afraid of becoming. Silence stretched between them. You could have changed the world, she said. I tried, he answered. She raised her hand. Behind her, Drogon snarled, but before she could speak the word, a shadow moved, Arya, a dagger in hand. A silent ghost in snow, but Daenerys turned. She saw her. Arya paused, eyes locked, and something passed between them, recognition, not of each other, but of destiny. I'm not Cersei, Dany whispered, and you're not the girl who killed the Night King. You don't know who I am, Arya said, but Dany smiled. I know what you are. And then she turned back to Ned. No more lies, and she plunged the dagger, so not into Arya, not into Ned, but into the snow. I won't be her, she said. Ned stared. You want justice? She asked. Kill me. But the realm needs peace, and peace doesn't come from fire. Or prophecy. Ned lowered his sword. Arya disappeared into the shadows once. More. The army behind Daenerys waited for the fire that never came. The North waited for the war that never arrived, and Jon Snow, still riding north, never saw the battlefield that wasn't. In the days that followed, a council was formed, not of kings, but of survivors. Brienne of Tarth, Davos Seaworth, Gendry Baratheon, Samwell Tarly, Tyrion Lannister. They called it the Hollow Council because none of them wanted to rule. They only wanted the bleeding to stop. And in a quiet vote, they asked Ned Stark to lead them, not as king but as warden. Of the realm, he refused. I've taken too much already, so they chose another, Tyrion. Broken, brilliant, reluctant, and Westeros began to heal. Jon Snow returned to the wall, took no titles, spoke no words. Arya sailed west. Sansa ruled the north, alone but proud. And Ned Stark, the Valonqar, returned to Winterfell. He never spoke of Cersei again, but sometimes he walked alone to the crypts and stood before Lyanna's tomb. Your son is safe, he whispered, and the realm may yet survive what I've done. Above, snow fell gently, a crownless world, a queenless throne, and in the cold, the last wolf watched the fire die out.